Hello, friends. Welcome to Logistics of Logistics podcast. My name is Joe Lynch. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today's topic is the revenue engine with my friend Kara Smith-Brown. How's it going, Kara?
Living the dream. Thank you for having me, Joe.
It's always a pleasure to talk to you. We're blabbing way too much before we hit record. So, Kara, please introduce yourself and your company and where you're calling from today.
Sure. I'm Kara Smith-Brown. I'm the CEO of LeadCoverage. We are the largest go-to-market consultancy that specializes in supply chain. And I'm calling from Atlanta, Georgia today, technically Serenbe, which is the rich hippie village that I've moved to, which is south of Atlanta, but still very much in Georgia. Yeah.
Very nice. Very nice. So what's the name of that city?
It's called Serenbe, which is technically in Palmetto or Chattahoochee Hills. But if you're familiar with Atlanta, then you probably know Serenbe. So it's really fun.
I've said this on my podcast a few times. I only interview people from three places: Georgia, Texas, and everywhere else. It's like it has become a supply chain hub down there.
I'm a Chicago girl at heart. I'm still a Chicago girl, but this is home for our girls. So I'm raising two Georgia peaches, which is very strange for me, but they're great. This is home now.
I used to say to my daughters, I lived in Dearborn growing up right outside Detroit. Then we moved out further out, an hour from Detroit. And I used to say to my daughters, I said, I'm not a hillbilly, but you two are. Look where you live.
Exactly.
Anyway, so one more time, who does LeadCoverage serve and what do you guys do for them?
Sure. So our ideal customer profile is basically anyone who listens to your podcast, Joe. So we focus on logistics providers, logistics tech companies, anyone that touches a truck, a plane, or a boat. And we do hyper specific go to market activities for them. So this is everything from really sophisticated Gartner and analyst relations campaigns. So we manage the analyst relations kind of product, if you will, for a bunch of our clients, making sure that they get the most they can out of Gartner, all the way through being the only HubSpot supply chain expert. We are also the ABM expert for supply chain. So we'll talk about intent data.
What is ABM?
Yeah, ABM is account based marketing. And a big piece of account based marketing is intent data, which I'm sure that we'll talk about today because I'm on an intent data bandwagon, if you will. I'm really excited about it and what we've been able to see for customers. And then all the way down to the first dial. So we actually have a team that will physically make the first dial for our clients and then pass those warm leads off to our clients. But we do it inside of a vacuum. So we're really trying to build the revenue engine, if you will, which is what the book is called that we wrote for our clients that are only in supply chain. So this is share good news. So you're sharing the good news that you have of your business with your ideal customer profile, tracking the interest of the individuals who are in your ideal customer profile, and then following up as soon as possible. And we do that every day, all day, just for this one very specific niche.
Yep. Kara, if there's something I've noticed recently about sales and marketing and go to market, all this is a lot more are saying, we started off just giving you this data. And then we started realizing we're giving the people. So we all know this. I've given my customer data. I've given them information that they can use to go get sales. And then 3 weeks later, when you say, did you do anything with it? They say, no. That's almost guaranteed. They didn't do anything with it. So I'm hearing a lot more people say done for you services, because there's nothing more maddening than a customer saying, Kara, this just isn't working. And you're like, that's because we did everything. We brought it right to your doorstep. All you had to do was open the door, and you didn't open the door. So I love that you're making those phone
It's
calls.
like you're working for me, Joe. We didn't even talk about this before before the podcast. So we wrote this book, and there's a story in the book about we handed this customer a list of his ideal customer profiles that had shown interest. We were like, this is the list. They came to your website, they showed interest. You should call them. And he never called them. And so he was like, hey, we got to end this engagement because your leads are garbage. And we were like, but you never called them. So this is the last time that happened to me. And I was also like right before the pandemic. And so in the thick of the pandemic, we put 26 people back to work just making dials for us. And it worked. And so we don't make cold calls, Joe, convert at a 1% conversion ratio. So you should expect almost no hits off a cold list. A warmed up list, which means someone has shown one buying signal, but really not more than one, will convert at about a 6% ratio. Hot prospects, individuals that have shown more than one buying signal and have some sort of intent will convert at a 40% conversion ratio. So we are always looking for the 40%. And what so many of our clients get wrong is that the disqualification inside the funnel is just as important as qualification. So if you are keeping every single person in your funnel who really shouldn't be in your funnel, you're never going to hit a 40 to 60% conversion ratio because you're selling into opportunity cost, right? And there's opportunity cost. Every follow-up that goes to a customer, someone who isn't supposed to be a customer, is opportunity cost.
Yep. Is Kara, I said this before we hit record to you that the very best, and again, I know you guys call yourself go to market rather than marketing. And I asked you why. I'll ask you again. You call yourself go to market, not marketing. Why is that?
I've been in this game a long time. And the very beginning of my career, I was always called the marketing girl. I was the marketing girl. There were hundreds of sales guys and one marketing girl. And in our space, marketing is pretty pictures, advertisements, sell sheets, right? Like tear sheets, whatever you want to call them, trade show banners, like all of the stuff that is not really going to do anything to drive revenue, right? But it is very specifically in our industry considered marketing. So we at Lead Coverage don't do pretty pictures. We don't do creative. We don't do websites. That is not our jam. We are all about the math and converting your content and your activity, the work that we're doing, your go to market to revenue. And so we do a lot more math than we do pretty pictures. And so because we really wanted to get away from this kind of four-letter word, which is marketing, the tech world is using go to market. So we just borrowed it.
Yep. Yep. I love that. And by the way, it reminds me when you said pretty pictures. So we do go, I've just started, we were both at a lot of conferences. You see the banners, hey, take our swag. And a friend of mine, he was Chip Humans. I grew up with him. He's a branding guy. And he said to me years ago, he said, for a long time, brands really measured brand awareness. And so he said, are you familiar with Campbell's chicken noodle soup? And I go, yes. He goes, that's brand awareness. We win. He said, now what do you think of it? I go, well, I don't crave it. I guess I eat it maybe if I'm feeling well or if there's something in the cupboard when I have no other food. He goes, that's exactly the right answer. That is what people are aware of chicken noodle soup, Campbell's chicken noodle soup, because it's not high end. It's not something you crave. It's something that's in your cupboard. And when you grab it, you go, hope this is still good. And he said, so we have to go past brand awareness. And that's the pretty pictures. That's where you go, hey, I got swag and it says this name on it. I'm aware that there's a company called blank. But does that mean I have any desire to work with them? Or do I crave their product? Do I think it's premium or anything else? No.
So we don't spend a ton of time on the word brand, if I'm honest. Like,
No, nor does he, because it's got the same connotations. It's got the same connotations as marketing, but it is pricing power for the companies that build the right brand.
amen. And the work that we do specifically around analyst relations and public relations helps you build a brand in the marketplace. So we often say to customers, like, hey, what box are you in? Are you in the 3PL box? Now there's a 4PL box, right? Gartner just decided that there's an actual definition for 4PL. Are you in the 4PL box? Are you just assets? Are you asset light? Are you asset smart? What box do you want to be in? And that's really branding. So we have these conversations with clients. But at the end of the day, if you put the B word on it, the branding word on it,
Oh, yeah.
folks in our space expect me to come up with taglines or like pretty pictures or their LinkedIn profile page. And I'm like, people just don't. That's not going to drive the needle when it comes to revenue.
And when I was just talking to my friend Chip, we talked a little bit about those coolers that are out there. What do I call them? Shoot. Drawing a blank, of course. Yeti. And how they charge $400 where everyone else is. I could get 7 or 8 coolers for $400.
One Yeti for 10 igloos.
Yeah, so it does work. But again, one of the things that I think that you're very sensitive to, and I am too, because I will call myself in the past a content marketer, which is creating the content. I wrote a lot of articles, I did a lot of webinars, and I did some websites, but would never consider myself a true marketer. And what you guys have really doubled down on is we are going to be results oriented. We are going to be so we don't even want to call ourselves marketing because the connotation sometimes, and again, I think this is the wrong way to think of it. The connotation only in logistics and transportation is fluff. The tech companies that come into our space say, yes, we're going to spend on go to market. And as you say, maybe we're just rebranding the word because it's hard to change it, change those connotations.
That's really it. Yeah. So you'll see in the book that we wrote that we do use the word marketing, but for the most part, we use the words go to market because it's holistic in nature.
So tell us a little bit about your book. What is the book and why did you write it?
Thanks for asking. It's called The Revenue Engine. It comes out on November 19th. We're super excited. And this is exactly what we do every day, all day for 30 plus logistics customers. We've been basically writing the book for the last 7 or 8 years since we've been in business, and we've taken our best case studies and we've put them in words, right? And we have a 9 step process. So it's a pretty specific framework. And if you just follow the framework and do what the book tells you to do, you can do this yourself. We're giving away the keys to the kingdom. We also know that doing the work is really hard. And like you said, go to market and marketing is usually under invested in supply chain. And so the book is really written for two people. One, it's for me when I was 22 on the floor of Echo Global Logistics, all by myself as my marketing team of one, because those girls still exist, right? The marketing girl and the floor of the brokerage, she still exists. So this is for her. And this is for her boss, right? So this is for the CEO who doesn't know how to ask his marketing person to do XYZ or to show their worth or to have a seat at the table because there's no definitive definition of what are good KPIs, what does good look like when it comes to marketing or go to market and supply chain. And so we just lay it all out there in the book. And it's got some really cool stuff in it. It's got a forward by Sangam Vajre, who wrote ABM is B2B. So he's an ABM practitioner. Will Haraway, my partner, writes a chapter on PR. Gartner approved our chapter on AR, which is super cool. And then we have a chapter on ABM and AI. So it's really like a manual, if you will, almost like a playbook for anyone. And it's specifically for supply chain. Anyone in B2B can use it, but all of the examples and all of the case studies are from our supply chain clients.
Yep, I love it. So, Kara, tell us a little bit about you. I know you come from this space, and again, I think just when we're talking go to market, I feel like every time I'm talking to somebody who previously would have been called a marketer, I almost have to justify their background because again, it is always wrongly been, oh yeah, that's the you just even said it, the marketing girl. We have the serious guys who bang the phones all day and that have very little success at this 1 minute. And then we have the marketing gal. She's pleasant. She's nice. She does this little, I don't know what she does over there.
Yeah. That's the story of my life, Joe. That was literally the story of my life. I'm not sure that I'm pleasant or nice, but
You are a salesperson through and through.
I am a salesperson at heart. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about you. Where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to school? Some career highlights before you started the juggernaut that is lead coverage.
Sure. So I'm from Chicago. I went to the University of Illinois, like most kids in the Chicago suburbs. I'm from Schaumburg.
That's a hard school to get into.
It wasn't that hard in 2000. It was probably harder than others, but it wasn't.
I
It's not
have
like
buddies who didn't
Harvard
get
for
in there,
sure.
so it's not that hard. It's not that easy.
It was fun. I had a great time. I loved U of I. Would blast. But I'm from the Chicago suburbs, and so went down to U of I the way most of my friends did. And my first real job out of college was at an association management company, which had nothing to do with supply chain. But I ended up filling out a job application at Echo Global Logistics, which at the time in 2006 was a startup. And my dad said to me, "Hey, you should go do that job, but all startups fail, so you should just be aware and but it's okay because you're like 25 or whatever, 22." And so 3 years later, when we had grown 3,000% in 3 years and Doug walked by and asked me to help him write the S1 for the IPO, I went to my dad and I said,
It's Doug Wagner, right?
yeah, Doug Wagner, yeah. Still the CEO of Echo, and I went home and told my dad, and I was like, "Hey, so my boss asked me to help with this IPO. This is good, right?" He's, "Yeah, okay, don't be a jerk. Yeah, that's good." So not all startups fail. This one went really well. I was not in the room where it happened. I was very happy to be on the sidelines, but also, like you said, the marketing girl that was fun and interesting and had a lot of energy. And I was training for an Ironman and doing weird stuff on the floor. And everyone kind of knew who I was, and I was just willing to do anything. So post IPO, I got picked up by Seco Logistics, the air freight forwarder. And then out of Seco, I got picked up by Osborne Hesse, which was into that eventually became Geodis. So that was my corporate career. So I had done big tech freight brokerage, one of the big ones.
Really successful companies.
Super successful. Yeah, I was very fortunate. And so I moved to back to Chicago after exiting the sort of Geodis transition and ended up moving back to Atlanta for a garbage brokerage job, which doesn't have a lot to do with supply chain, but it was really fun, learned a ton. And then I learned the statistic, Joe, that less than 2% of female founders will break $1 million in revenue. And I was like, okay, hold my beer. Let's go do that. So we did that in 8 months. Not only did we did that with an all-female team just because I felt like I needed to, like, one up it. And the number of women that break 10 million in revenue is so small that it is statistically irrelevant. So you can imagine our next goal. So yeah, so we've been having a great time. That's how the business was started. Will Haraway, at the same time that I was starting my business, was starting his business. So we combined efforts in 2019 and rebranded both of our businesses to LeadCoverage. Now we're a team of 42 on 3 continents. Totally wild. We have people all over the world. We have, clients from anywhere from multi-billion dollar private equity backed massive brands that you would know, all the way down to freight tech startups that are getting their start on the trade show floor. And we're just having so much fun. Like, every day is work, obviously, but we are having an absolute blast. We've grown more than 40% every year for the last 7 or 8 years. Inc. 5000 3 times in a row. We're getting all these accolades and all these clubs, and it's just been a blast. We're having so much fun.
Yep. I think I met you. I knew of your company, but I think the first time I met you was not last summer. We're speaking in October. Not last summer, but the summer before last. We were in Savannah, and you gave a wonderful presentation about one of your customers at Transportation Marketing and Sales Association.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
And I remember thinking, the doubters, anyone who thinks that marketing or go to market isn't about ROI, needed to be at that, because it was a wonderful presentation, but you had your customers with you. So it wasn't like, oh, I'm saying this and I hope none of my customers hear how much I said I made them. They were there. And I talked to that customer quite a bit. I've had him on my podcast since.
Yeah, we can talk about who it is. We can say it's ITS Logistics. It's
Yeah.
published.
Yeah.
It was recorded. It's published. Yeah. They're a wonderful team.
It means when you got your customer right there, you can't lie. And one of the things I thought it was super impressive, and I'll let you talk a little bit more about it, is how you get them on the news.
Yes. ITS is a huge story, just an absolute win for us. They had really good bones when we walked in the door, right? Paul Brazier, who really is their media ready human for all things drayage, is just an incredible opportunity for us to put someone on the news. But their whole team is excellent, right? The ITS team is just excellent. And Pat McFarland, who you're talking about, Patrick, is just incredible and willing to let us try anything. I don't think the man ever said no. Like, I don't think he ever says no. He is game to try anything. So thank you for remembering that. Actually, in 72 hours, which is so funny that we're recording this podcast on October 8th. On Friday this week, we will be at the same conference, so the TMSA show. And this time, ODW Logistics will be with us on stage. So, another incredible story and another amazing client who's willing to get on stage with us and do a case study of the work we've done together. So, really proud that our customers are willing to do that for us.
You created with ITS some sort of index that gets notice on Fox Business and CNBC. Talk about that.
Yeah. So this is actually one of the 3 strategies that work for supply chain go to market today. So this is our best example of true executive thought leadership. So what this means is planting a flag on something that you are the best in. So ITS happened. We walked in the door and did a discovery with them, and they happened to do drayage at all 26 ports, which is not super normal, very rare. And so we were like, oh, that's super weird and different. Do you have math that you can share around drayage? And Paul Brazier was like, yeah, absolutely. Like we got all kinds of math. And Paul's just wonderful in farming and super smart and can get on stage. And so we put together the very fun and exciting Port Rail Ramp Index. And every single month, it's super simple. It's 3 KPIs. And Paul gives his commentary on what's going on with the ports. Now, the IWLA strike was just last week, right? Didn't last very long, but Paul got to be on the news for roughly 24 to 48 hours straight. When the Key Bridge collapsed, he was also on the news because this index goes out every single month without fail. And ITS is now known by the press as someone who's really reliable to get on and have a top line macroeconomic conversation about what the impact of this is going to be on supply chain, which is just incredible. And I think what we've learned is that every single customer, every single supply chain company has their own version or should have their own version or can have their own version of an index. So whether it's what's happening cross-border right now, which is a huge piece of what's happening and reshaping the macroeconomics of this entire continent, right? Having a real key position on cross-border could be one, having a key position on rail, et cetera. Like whatever the thing is that you have a specialty in, you can create an index on.
It's interesting. University of Michigan, I lived not too far from there. I got my master's there. And one of the things they have is this consumer confidence index that is constantly mentioned. And I want to mention to Jason Miller, now keep in mind he's a Buckeye and a Spartan, Jason Miller from Michigan State. And he said, oh, I'm not so sure I believe it. I go, does that matter if you don't believe it or not? The index is the index and everybody quotes it. And I don't know who created it or why, but it works. And we're going to talk more about thought leadership in a minute, but that is thought leadership. It's not buy from me, we're great. Like we're, we look at our colors or look at our cool banner. This is truly, we're on TV talking about it. I used to say this when I was still selling. People would say to me, okay, I was selling cross-border stuff years ago for a trucking company I was working with. And I remember them saying, oh, no, thanks, we don't need any help. And then I remember I invited them to a webinar on cross-border shipping. And I remember they showed up ahead of time. I was like, oh, hey, whatever their name was, before we hit record on the webinar. And they're like, oh, so you guys are really experts in this. And I thought, oh, isn't that interesting? Because we're doing a webinar. Now, when I was talking to you on the phone 2 days ago, I wasn't an expert. I was a sales guy. Now, 2 days later, I'm an expert.
This is 100%. I love this. And I might actually steal that story because I think it's a really good one, right? Like when I'm calling you and talking to you, I'm just some person trying to sell you something. But when I'm in front of you or I'm on stage or I'm on the news, giving this like kind of the macro version, I think is really important.
Right.
And that it's not just about you, it's about all of our other we do this, right? We are the go-to-market experts on supply chain. I can tell you what you're doing right, wrong, or indifferent. I know the pill to give you because my laboratory is bigger than yours. I am growing 36 logistics companies right now, today. And I have grown more than 50 in the time that we've had this company. And so I know the problems that you have and how to solve them because I'm doing this every day, all day, and I'm an expert. Same thing with our friends in rail, supply chain, LTL, right? Pick a mode, pick a region, pick a produce, or pick an industry, etc. And I think this all also goes back to your ideal customer profile. Joe, I am useless in pharma. I'm useless in beauty. I'm useless in ed tech. Like I'm useless in any industry that isn't supply chain. I don't have any idea what's going on inside of the beauty industry. But when you want to have a conversation about we've one of our clients, one of my favorite clients, Freight Science. They are the data AI. Their AI is like their math isn't that they're a bunch of mathematicians. But they are the data wrapper around a TMS only for trucking companies today. And what they can do for that very specific ICP is so sexy. And we're the only shop who like really understands the difference between a truckload carrier, an LTL carrier, intermodal carrier, right? Like it's so nuanced. And so like the nuance of this industry is very specific for us and for our customers. So when someone says to me, "Oh, my ideal customer profile is anyone that ships," I'm like, "Is it?" right? Do you do small parcel? Are you doing reefers? Are you doing heavy haul? Are you sure?
I will say this is my own, since I'm a pre-internet person, I did exist. And it's funny trying to explain to your kids how you went to school and got a college degree and everything without the internet. They're like, "But how?" So
Don't get
and
me
it's funny.
started. My children now
It's
have,
hard to
like,
explain that.
logins. They're in 6th grade. Why does she need to log in to play the cello? I don't know.
I think in a lot of ways, if you were pre-internet, you could call it. You'd say, "Hey, we specialize." I'm talking to Karen. She's a food buyer, and I call and I say, "I'm an expert in food shipping," and you say, "Oh, okay." Might call the next guy. "I'm an expert in automotive." We don't have websites. We don't have LinkedIn. No one can look you up. Pre-internet, I could say, "Yeah, one of the largest. We're no one knows our name, but we're one of the largest trucking companies in America." And you go, oh, "Okay, that's what he said," and he had a brochure. It said that.
Yeah,
Now you look and go, "Joe, there's 3 employees there. I'm not so sure I believe you." Now I can look and say, "Your website doesn't say anything about you being a food expert." There's nothing that gives me that sense. So I did do some digital marketing, and I'll tell you, this goes back 12 years. Doing websites where people would say to me going in, "We can move anything that moves. We can move, like, whatever freight you have, we can move." And I said, "That worked pre-internet. It doesn't work now because Google will not let you be expert in everything. They don't believe it." Now, it's interesting if you look at like Deloitte or some of these consulting companies, professional service firms, they will have verticals where they've said, "Okay, we're going to be experts in manufacturing and in supply chain and in pharma." And they will go out and they'll seek out authors and they'll become the thought leadership. And if they aren't thought leaders in that space, they aren't going to play.
right. That's our strategy, right? Like, we are also a HubSpot diamond shop, and HubSpot services any industry. Like, you can be beauty, med tech, ed tech, like, HubSpot doesn't care. If HubSpot gets a lead in, that's a truck, a plane, or a boat, we're on the list of partners to help them execute that HubSpot transition. Yeah, it's great. It's been wonderful for us. They're a great partner, but we often get sort of HubSpot inquiries that have nothing to do with supply chain. And so we have to hand them back to HubSpot and say, "Hey, this is not, thank you, but, like, we get a lot of moving companies from HubSpot, like physical, like, moving companies. I'm like, this isn't really logistics." And so we have to hand them back.
They have some overlap. That's the crazy one. But anyway, let's switch gears and talk about this book. So, you wrote a book and it's called The Revenue Engine: Fueling a B2B High Octane Pipeline. Why did you write a book?
I wrote a book because I needed this book when I was in my 20s. And we wrote a book to give us that third party awareness, right? We wanted people to understand that there is a method to the madness. It is not, "Oh, gee, we're going to try this thing and we're going to do this other," like, there is a very clear framework to how we go to market and how we take our customers to market. So we basically put the framework together, which is share good news, track interest, follow up. There are 3 funnels: the prospecting funnel, who are strangers, the nurture funnel, who are not strangers, and the customer funnel, which is cross sell, upsell. And then really important to us is measurement. So the last third of the book is all about volume, velocity, and value, and how you measure volume, velocity, and value inside of your 3 pipelines. So it's been a labor. It's been like an 18 months, like 2 years to get this book out there, and I'm so excited.
I saw you posting about it on LinkedIn saying that you're writing a book. And I remember thinking, "Oh, I'm looking forward to her getting to the place where it's going to be done because I want to have her on the podcast." And by the way, I should also mention to those who are listening, I used to read books and then I switched to Kindle. And then I don't know, 5, 7 years ago, I switched to Audible on Amazon. And you're doing Audible and you're doing it in your voice, which is great. There are authors who I know what their voice is, and then they pay someone else to do and that is so disconcerting. So I'm really
Just like
happy.
you're like, they're ready to hear this person, and then it's like an actor, and you're like, "Wow."
So Peter Zion, I watch him every day. He's a geopolitical guy on YouTube, and I remember listening to one of his books, and it was somebody else other than Peter Zion doing the narration, and I was like, "Oh." And then I listened to his last book, which was with him, and I was like, "He probably got a lot of negative feedback." And you told me, and everybody I talked to about this says It's ridiculously hard to do that audio book.
It was one of the hardest things I've had to do. I've done hard things, right? Like, I've built a business as a woman in supply chain, like, that's really hard. I've done an Ironman, like, I have done really hard things, and recording my own audiobook was probably top 10, like, hard things in my life. It was way harder than I thought it was gonna be, and I'm, like, a former thespian and opera singer and did stand-up and stuff, so I thought it was gonna be totally fine. But there's a woman in my ear the whole time. "Hey, let's do that sentence again," and put the emphasis on the "the" instead of the "a." You're just like, "Oh my gosh." The funniest part was at one point, someone said to me while we were recording something about I messed up a word, and I was like, "But this is my book." So I'm not a paid actor who's gonna get a ding if I miss the word "the." Like, it's all some things you read them and they just don't sound the same.
What's interesting is right now I could have AI. I could say, AI, give me Kara Smith Brown's voice, and then I could have it read the book. That would not be good for me because I would quickly realize, oh, that's not Kara talking. So the uniqueness of our voice, it goes away. And I'm sure at some point AI will pick all that up and it'll be able to replicate exactly, but not yet.
The other thing is there's 3 funny stories in the book. So the first funny story is how we used, I'm gonna say silly names, but they're really stripper names. We used stripper names to get truck drivers to open emails, which is a great story, a long time ago. And then the second one is how I trapped my husband into marrying me, and I make it about dating in Chicago in my 20s being like a sales funnel.
There was a movie about that,
Yeah, I'm sure
about
there was.
last night with Demi Moore and Rob Lowe.
And then the last funny story is how I got
That's
fired.
how everyone in Chicago looks.
Exactly, yeah. My husband actually does not look like him actually, but the last one is how I got fired from being Girl Scout cookie mom, and we use volume, velocity, and value as, like, why I got fired from being Girl Scout cookie mom. Like, the stories are really funny, and if I had an actor read stories, it just wouldn't have been the same. So, I'm looking forward to people listening to it and then getting on stage, recognizing the voice. I don't know, it's either gonna be terrible because I sound like a Chicago frog, or it's gonna be great and people are gonna be like, "This is really fun."
You have a great voice. Also, I'm not just saying this to be nice, but a lot of times when you have marketing companies will say, yeah, but we do great marketing for everyone but us. We do thought leadership for everyone but us. This is thought leadership for LeadCoverage and Kara Smith Brown and all your people who helped with that book.
Yeah, it does feel a little like drinking our own Kool-Aid, right?
Yeah. So when somebody says, oh, yeah, it's easier said than done doing this, you go, yeah, we wrote the book, literally wrote the book. So, anyway, let's talk about before we hit record, we agreed on some points we wanted to talk about. And first up, before we get to that, when does the book come out?
November 19th, 2024. I'm so excited.
And it's called The Revenue Engine Fueling a B2B High Octane Pipeline. And who doesn't want that in these difficult times? So, we had 3 points. What's the first point you want to talk about?
Yeah, I think the only one, I think we've covered the other pieces just in our conversation, Joe. I think the most important thing, if I were to give anyone just free unsolicited advice, right, on thing go to market for supply chain is data. So I'll give you a little bit about what intent data is and how we're using it for clients. So I'll tell you a little story that may or may not be true in the future to explain what intent data means. So I believe that Tim Cook will one day get on stage and say, I am insourcing Apple's supply chain, right? When he does this in 2026 or 2025, everyone's going to freak out, right? All the big guys are like, wait, what? What's going on? How are we going to do this? This decision was not made the morning that Tim Cook got up, right? This decision was made 2 years before by a Tiger team in Cupertino. And that Tiger team right now are sending intent signals into the marketplace through their search volume, right? So they're downloading Gartner reports, they're looking up how do I buy a fleet? How do I buy a TMS? What are the best WMSs? How do I connect my OMS to my EMS? They're putting together a package for their bosses at Apple that'll eventually get approved and then we'll say, hey, we're going to insource our supply chain. What we are looking for are the buying signals or the intent cues from that Tiger team Cupertino. They're essentially giving us little breadcrumbs to help us identify that, oh, there's something happening at Apple, or there's something happening at Nordstrom, or there's something happening at Walgreens or Walmart, right? So we're looking for these little buying signals every day, all day. And this is called intent data. And it is everywhere. And so there are two really strong tools that do this for us. If your listeners are interested in learning more about this, if you just Google account-based marketing, I want you to think of account-based marketing as the word healthcare, right? Like big broad word, ABM. The micro sort of piece of this might be like your GP, right? Like your general practitioner doctor. That's your intent data. And then maybe your dermatologist, your specialist is the next piece of the pie, which is programmatic media buying, which I won't bore you or your audience on like the specifics of these. What you really need to understand that if your marketing group or the individuals that are helping you with go to market are not having robust conversations data or account based marketing at scale, you are behind. And you are behind because big guys have been doing it for a long time. They're getting really good at it. They're using the best tools. And the democratization of these tech tools is becoming available for the mid market and SMB. So you can get some pretty easy data out of Zoom Info, Lead Feeder, Seamless, Bombora. Like there are low risk tools to get data. But to your earlier point, what I really understand is yes, of account based of the B2B account based marketing ecosystem. If all you do is collect and ever action on that data, do any good. And so still have to follow up. We still have to send emails. We still have to make phone calls. We still have to run people through a traditional sales engine. But we're essentially prioritizing the sales engine from, hey, anyone that ships, hey, just 20 customers who have shown intent signal against this very specific piece of whatever's happening in the universe, because we know that something is happening and we want to go find out how we solve their problem.
So when I think about, like for me, I want to talk to people who want to be on podcasts. So there are people right now, and I don't use intent data. So there are people out there right now who are looking for to do thought leadership things. So I always think of what I do as thought leadership. People come on my podcast. My goal when people come on my podcast is for you to be able to. I want my audience to get to know and trust you like it's a sales call. I want them to relate to you on some level. Then I want you to talk about the problems you solve and your expertise. And at the end, we plug. And I always think those people who are looking for thought leadership, and I sell thought leadership, so I know that's out there. Somebody's searching for it, but how do I get that? Or how do you get that for your customers?
Yeah, it's a little bit difficult for you, Joe, because you're a human being, right? So you're looking for like human beings doing something very specific. For us, we're looking for enterprise companies or shippers, right? So we're looking for the buying signal inside a shipper that shows something is happening. I'll give you a very specific example. So if you were a consultant that stands up new boxes, new warehouse boxes, you would be looking for any company that's looking for real estate. So if someone is sending out real estate signals, there's probably something happening where they need to get involved somewhere in the country. Robots is another. So if someone is doing searches and they're downloading the latest Gartner report on what robot to buy for my warehouse, something's happening. There's been a change in their environment that they're looking for a solution to. You may not have the right robots, but something is happening. There's a change. That's really what you're looking for. You're looking for, give me a signal that there's a change somewhere before it hits the annual report. If you wait until the annual report gets printed and released to the universe, it's not like someone else already has that business, right? We're looking for like the precursor to the
So is
RFP.
this search? This is searches on Google.
No, it searches on other third-party websites. So if I were the one that actually owned this software, we'd be having a very different conversation, right? So I don't own the software. We're just practitioners. Our two favorite tools are Rollworks, and this is the mid-tier level, and 6sense, which is the top tier level. 6sense is about $150,000 a year, so it's really expensive. But you can get away with probably 30 or 40 grand for Rollworks. And these tools, essentially what you do is say, okay, these are my 50 target customers, right? These are my 50 targets. And these are the things that I want to know if they're actively searching on. And this can be downloading Gartner reports. It can't I mean Google's included, but it's more like sophisticated, right? So are they going to the trade shows? Are they paying attention to what's happening in the trade press? What are they looking at? What are they looking for, right? And they call it surging. So, for example, we loaded up one customer. One customer is they had 75 accounts they really want to get after, and their prospects were all surging on one very specific robot company. We didn't really care what robot, right? Because my customer doesn't sell robots, but they do the warehouse around the robots. So the fact that there were 16 of the 75 that were surging on robots, we just made a phone call. Hey, it looks like something's happening and stuff, right? It's just a breadcrumb for what might be happening.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it's really fun because you can do it geographically, you can do it industry specific. You can like once you get really into this, it's really about putting the right content in front of the right person at the right time. There's a study done by Harvard that says that 95% of your buying market is not in market at any given time. So you're essentially marketing to every human who could buy from you to find the 5% that are actively buying right now. And these tools tell you like, hey, these are the ones that are likely to be in that 5%.
The one thing about that is, so you're on my podcast, we'll call this a thought leadership project on your part. And so somebody might not be buying today. The vast majority of people listening are not buying. It'd be rare if there was somebody who said, yes, I'm buying that today. But somebody gets to know you and then maybe they say, we're not buying today, but we're not happy with our current marketing, or we're going to make a bigger investment in market or go to market. We're want a larger investment in go to market next year, and they're hearing you today. So hopefully you get into their thinking now.
Yeah, and then it's all about follow-up.
They connect with you on LinkedIn.
And it's about staying in the inbox. We don't do a lot of email marketing at LeadCoverage, but I post if you follow me on LinkedIn, like I post every day. And we only do what works. So we don't make cold calls anymore because they don't work, but we can attribute almost $4 million in revenue to posting to LinkedIn. Like the ability to get in front of people and have a position on go to market for supply chain and basically write the book on LinkedIn over 5 years. And then we just took the LinkedIn posts and turned them into the book, right? That's been really successful for us. It's not going to be successful for everyone. And shippers may or may not be reading your thought leadership on LinkedIn. But one of the last, well, it's the last of the three strategies that really work in supply chain partnerships. And there are some excellent examples of using partnerships to drive revenue. P44 was the first, right? Early in the mid 2000s when Jet was really aggressively going after partnerships, he was the first to really commercialize a partnership strategy, and it still works today.
What is a partnership strategy? Please elaborate.
Yeah, so a partnership strategy it literally is what it sounds like. You need to identify who are the individuals in your network who are non-competitive, but your customers think are credible in some way, right? So McLeod is an excellent example, right? McLeod has 150 partners. They are just an incredible opportunity for companies that are starting out in supply chain or trying to figure out how to get into brokers and carriers. McLeod is an excellent partnership ecosystem to be a part of because they're so well known, right? So get on that list. Trucker Tools, truckstop.com, like all of the big tech companies in supply chain have really robust partnership opportunities. And it's just third party credibility. And so we like to do one partnership press release a month.
Okay. I was just at Trimble a few weeks ago in Vegas, and that is with their partners. And this I think this is what I learned there. So if I think about my phone and call my phone the ELD, right? Or it's a tablet now. Trimble is like the operating system that helps that thing work. And then all the apps are all their partners. But beyond that, they had a ton of their competitors there. And when I spoke to Rob Painter, their CEO, he said, and this was mimicked by everyone I talked to, they said, yeah, our partners are all here at Trimble, of course, but we also have a lot of our competitors who we work closely with. So we partner, compete a little bit over here, but that's okay.
Co-opetition, I think is the word, right?
But you think about it, that's how the internet works. If I go onto Chrome, I can type in Microsoft and they're not going to say, no, we're not going to take you over to Microsoft because we're Google.
Yeah, and I think in supply chain because I believe that the democratization of technology in general is created these niches inside of supply chain, right? Like you can buy a TMS that is hyper specific only for LTL. Like that exists, right? There are hyper specific niche players, and you get to now cobble together your own tech stack using all these different partnerships, and you can choose your TMS and your factoring company, like all the pieces that go together. The integrated inbox I saw for the first time live at the McLeod user conference, and it was very cool, right? What those guys at Highway are doing is like really amazing. And it's been really fun to help our clients build this list of partnerships, right? And then some partnerships will take no time and some partnerships will take a long time. So understanding, hey, this one might take 6 or 9 months to get done. So let's get started on it because we really do want to get it out there in the marketplace. But it's all about third party validation of what you're putting together and making sure that people are like, hey, this brand is X and this brand is Y. And together they make magic, which is really cool. So it's very much a part of what we like to have people do.
So I know you said we talked on about some of these things already, but one of the things we touched on a little bit is understanding your ideal customer profile. I know that's super important to what you guys are doing. So please talk about that for a minute.
It is. It's super important to us. Like I said before, we sometimes will sit down with new customers as they come on board and we'll say, hey, who is your ideal customer profile? And they'll tell us anyone that ships. And the answer is that's just not true, right? So there are 19,677 shippers in America that have sort of material shipping value. So in order for you to understand,
Wait, over what? The 19,000 is how much are they shipping per year? How
we get about $7 million a year ish is the number that we've come up with after doing this for 7 or 8 years.
19,000 plus companies
That's right.
ship
About
about 7
20,000.
million?
Yeah, or more, obviously, or more. So we made the baseline, but it's a little fuzzy. Don't quote me on this.
Right,
People
right,
like to
right.
people like to shoot me down, and I'm like, listen, these are round close, directionally correct, and they're a little bit different, right? 20,000 material shippers, right? You may only be able to serve 2,500 of them. My favorite example actually is back from when I got started, like a million years ago, and the company I was working for was a TMS that serviced shippers that made frozen food, so frozen food shippers only, not carriers, just shippers that used Microsoft Dynamics ERP. And I was like, this is the most amazing ideal customer profile ever. There were 2,200 of them. There just weren't that many companies on the planet that had this very specific ideal customer profile. So we just called them, right? Instead of spending tens of thousands of dollars on getting in front of the Microsoft ecosystem to figure out which ones were using the right ERP and do they ship frozen food or not frozen food, reefer, we just called them and it worked. We crushed it. And so I think the tighter you can get on the ideal customer profile, the better. Technographics is super important too, right? So if you're
Wait, what is that?
technographics is what is their tech stack. So are they on Trimble? Are they on McLeod? Are they using some sort of third party? Are they not? And everyone's a little different. And so you can build that technographic profile to see whether or not they would be a fit. You can disqualify Joe and cut out the opportunity cost of trying to sell to someone who isn't going to fit for some reason down the road, right? I'm a marketer. I've had more than one time where a CEO says to me, go after and get this logo. This is the logo we want. Go get them. And so we spend hours and hours finding the right people, putting together a campaign, doing these enterprise accounts just to get to the finish line and realize they physically can't be a customer because they're on some antiquated system, right? Or like they built some integration to, I don't know, cargo wise that needs to be managed by some guy. And there's just all these little pieces that you don't really know until you get in. And so I think if you can figure that out early and disqualify on the way in, and that ideal customer profile gets tighter and tighter, your opportunity cost goes down and your ability to close goes up.
I love it. I love it. So there was one last thing I wanted to talk to you about was the 3 go-to-market strategies that are currently working. We touched on all of them, but let's hit them again.
Yeah, we definitely talked about it, but let's wrap them up. So the first is the index. So thank you so much for being like, oh yeah, I remember this. So the ITS Port Rep Index is a great example of this. So executive thought leadership very specifically in some sort of repeatable engine that is driven to the marketplace. So the ITS index is a great example of that. The second strategy that's really working in supply chain is account based marketing, very specifically around intent data. So ABM can mean a lot of things to a lot of people, like the word healthcare. We are very specific on the intent data version of ABM. And then lastly is partnerships and really having a focused effort on not just executing partnerships, but marketing the partnerships. So it's one thing to have a co-selling agreement with someone. It's something else entirely to tell the universe that you are officially partnered with someone. So those are the 3. That's it, Joe. If you do those, you'll crush it.
I love it. I'll tell you, while we're talking today, one of the things that occurs to me is that the go-to-market strategies that we've talked about here have gotten significantly more sophisticated, and it's not a superficial thing. And you mentioned early on, oh yeah, when somebody says marketing and they go, oh, does that mean we have cool business cards and a new logo and refreshed website? Yeah, you can call it that, but the problem with that is it does get thrown into the category of fluff. And what we're talking about today, though, is not fluff. It's more science than art for sure.
I think lastly, to put a kind of a bow on it, is all 3 of those strategies are measurable. And you measure them using volume, velocity, and value metrics, which is another whole podcast in itself. But the way that we measure success in these 3 strategies is hyper specific because we don't do anything if it doesn't drive revenue.
And it's interesting because I'm not a marketer, but I work with a lot of marketers. And every once in a while, when somebody says, "Oh, if I go on your podcast, how many customers will I get? How many leads will I get? Whatever." And I always go, "It's not like that." I always call we're the dark funnel. You have to do it. You have to do it. There's no guarantee. It's and I joke about this, but I think as go to market people and marketers, whatever you want, salespeople, we want you to download a white paper or attend our webinar, and then what we look at that is you got on the expressway to a sale, and we are going to track you every step of the way. And we go, yep, he's 40 miles from the sale, 30 miles from the
I
sale.
tell my team this, Joe, is that no one wakes up in the morning going, I cannot wait to become their SQL today. No one wakes up like, I can't wait to become a marketing qualified lead today and have someone follow up with me 15 times. Like, it's just nobody wants to be sold to. It's just nobody does it.
But people listen to my podcast. I know people get customers from because I talk to them about it.
Sure.
Now, how I look at it is people listen to podcasts like mine. They learn about a business, their person, and they go, oh, I like that person. I'm going to reach out. And I look at that as they're not on the expressway that we'd love them to be on, that we can track them and go, yes, they're on my list. They're on the dirt road adjacent to the highway, watching you from afar. And
Sure.
when I've gone to conferences and when I go to conferences, people always say to me, every time I talk to a lot of founders like you, a lot of people go, every time I interview someone, they say, oh, I heard you on that podcast. And I was talking, there's 3 or 4 founders who had been on my podcast. They go, oh my God, every single person who interviews with me. And I was like, yeah, it's an interesting thing. It's not a sale, but those people are looking and saying, I'm investigating that company, and they find you. So if somebody's looking, hopefully they are, in a few months, and they say, oh, I want to understand more about LeadCoverage. And then they go, oh, I heard Kara Smith Brown's on this podcast. I'll take a listen. And I always think it's that now that's not as measurable as intent data and some other stuff that we would love to put measurements on. But it is an interesting dilemma because to some extent, it's like saying, hey, Kara, did you spend time with your kids this weekend? You go, yes, I did. Did you measure it? Give me the download. And you're like, no, it's not like that. I have a
Well, I got to tell you,
relationship with those
Joe,
kids.
we don't have time to talk about it today, but I would be happy to come back on and talk about single stream intent data, which is actually probably the sexiest thing that's coming out of just being online. And you have it. Having a podcast, have individuals who come to the podcast to identify who's being thoughtful, like thought leaders in the marketplace, who's smart, who is Joe theoretically endorsing because you're having them on the podcast. And that is actually a version of intent data. And there are individuals in supply chain who are selling single stream intent data, and it's really sexy. And it's probably what's coming in the next 5 to 8 years.
Yeah. Anyway, every time I talk to you, I'm blown away by how, you said intent data, but I'm thinking like this is an intentional approach. It's not so long ago. It's just if somebody would say, what is marketing? It would be like this kind of that. And
It is very far from tear sheets and blog posts. Like, we're very far from that, yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny because you still have to create great content, and you guys do create great content with your partners. And I always think You've said it before. I think it was share the good news. What is those three things?
Yeah, share good news, track interest, follow up.
Yep. Yep. But this is the furthest from fluff you can get. And again, that's forever. You are fighting a little bit of an uphill battle. And I think you're to the top of the hill at this point, where this is not the marketing that we did 20 years ago. This is how you grow your business. This is why they call it go to market.
You would think that we've reached the summit and that people are like, "Yes, of course, like, this makes sense." And I have calls weekly with people that we have to start from 0. Like, we are explaining the basics, and but I think it's supply chain, right? It's the market that we've chosen, and there are some really sophisticated teams in logistics, like, the Redwood team is just knocks my socks off all the time, they're amazing, and there are some teams that are, like, starting from 0, right? Like, startup folks that they don't have time, there's not enough money to go around, etcetera. So, we are very happy to fill that void, Joe, that there is an echo chamber around really smart, sophisticated go-to-market strategies and supply chain, and we're thrilled to fill that hole. And if someone reads the book and they take it back to their organization and they execute some of it, awesome. If they read the book and they call us and they're like, please do it for us, also awesome. But I'm really glad that someone is filling this void in the marketplace, because when I was 25, I was the marketing girl and there wasn't anyone that I could look to say, please guide me and show me what good looks like.
By the way, I was listening to Peter Thiel talk. He's a venture capitalist and investor in Facebook. He's a billionaire. Not so long ago, I heard him. I think he was on Joe Rogan. He said, not so long ago, you would see it was called computer science, not computer engineering, and it was considered fluffy. It was considered less, what's the right word? Less technical, less of a engineering business than, and what we've seen over the last generation, now all of a sudden you have people calling it computer engineering. And I guess to my point is at some point, every industry makes a transition and grows up. Marketing has made that transition. And I think the best example is who's doing it. Years ago when I was blogging, I remember I could be front page for LTL, ahead of the LTL carriers. I was page 1 Google for LTL. And I was like, on a lot of articles I wrote. And I was like, there's a whole bunch of LTL companies. I work with them. And yet I'm page 1. I'm like, where are all the big brokerages? And I remember thinking, I would look at their articles and go, I can beat all of them. I'm better than all of them. I'm sitting at a restaurant at 10 o'clock at night writing an article that is going to be page 1 Google. Those days are gone. The big boys are investing in it, in really good marketing, but also every new VC-backed startup says, we are going to have a go-to-market strategy. So if you're listening now and saying, we don't do that. I grew up as a freight broker. I made 100 phone calls a day and it worked for us. And that's how we still do it. Now we're sending emails, but we don't need marketing. We don't need go-to-market. The world changed.
It did. It did. And I think what's so exciting is the world changed. And as the world changed, Joe, the democratization of these tools also changed. And so what I mean by that is, while the big guys can afford the 6 senses of the world, like, there are tools that are available for startups and mid-market brokers and carriers and tech companies that you can afford. Like, they exist. They're not going to be super sexy, but like, you can make this work on any size budget. You just have to have the energy to get it done.
I love it. So what I'll do, Kara, I'll put a link to your LinkedIn profile, a link to your website, and any other links you and and a link to your book, and
Yeah,
any other links your go-to-market team give me, I will put in the show notes. And thank you so much. It is always a pleasure. I love what you guys are doing and how you're doing it.
Thank you so much, Joe. It was always a pleasure to see you. Talk soon.
And thank all of you for listening to my podcast. Your support is very much appreciated. Until next time, onward and upward. You have been listening to the Logistics of Logistics podcast, where we engage with leaders in the logistics and supply chain community. If you like what you hear, please subscribe, hit the like button, and leave us a nice review on Apple or Spotify or wherever else you listen. Also, please check out our videos on YouTube and connect with us on LinkedIn. We're very big on LinkedIn. And you can also reach us on the logisticsoflogistics.com, our website.